Ohio Turnpike.
Thank you. As mentioned, my name's David George, and I'm a systems analyst for the Ohio Turnpike Commission. Basically, the systems analyst is also, I'm a programmer supervisor. So my history at the Turnpike, I've been there for about 13 years now, and I've actually, I am also one of the other gray-haired ones here. So I've been in this field for going on 30 years now, almost over 30 years. And for me and for the Turnpike actually started back in the early 50s. I believe 1954 was the first ribbon cutting on one of the first interchanges. And, you know, we talk about the technology on the Turnpike. Okay, just about a few years ago, well, okay, to today too, we're still getting rid of our old alphas. We have some old processing that is still done on there. So what you're seeing on the right there is not too far off from, you know, where we've come over the last 30 years, or 40 years, excuse me, over the last 60 plus years. My math brain usually shuts off on the weekends, but it also seems to shut off when I'm in front of people. Oops, let me go back here. So, as I say, the Turnpike was formed in the early 50s, and we talk about different technologies that exist on the Turnpike currently. Just recently, we've had some major system upgrades. Our computer-aided dispatch center down in the lower right-hand corner used to be done all on Excel sheets. As you know, they had a need for the multiple monitors there, not just for monitoring closed-circuit cameras and weather across the entire Turnpike, but also multiple monitors to have those all those different spreadsheets open so they can enter into the one spreadsheet, copy it, paste it into the other one, and it was constantly a copy and paste here. And we just recently signed a contract with the state of Ohio with the MARC system, and now we have a fully integrated computer-aided dispatch system. So, you know, a lot of people talk about their warehouses and the size of their warehouses and the size of their organizations. The Turnpike really, the way you could look at it is we're 1,000 employees with our headquarters in Berea of roughly about 100 employees, maybe a little bit less than that. But our physical office, you could actually look at it as 241 miles long at about maybe 100 feet wide or so, just to either side of the actual main line of the Turnpike. And strewn across that Turnpike are 8 maintenance buildings and 31 interchanges, constantly collecting data, pushing data, getting employees signed into the systems, getting employees signed out of there, having them work 24/7 in those locations, except in our Berea location. And our Berea location is actually right on the Turnpike, and that seems to be, you know, the central processing area for all of this data that we've been collecting over the years. A lot of the information that we're collecting also are the cars coming and going on the Turnpike, and so we've always talked about being able to build our dashboards. You know, that's our current director. That's his big plug is, you know, I'd like to walk into my room and I want to see how many cars are on the Turnpike and how much money, you know, we've generated over the last week and this and this and that. And, you know, my boss, our CTO, is just recently new to the Turnpike as of a year ago. And, you know, he's also on that on the technology bandwagon. as I say, back to, where's our pointer here? Yeah. As I say, when I started 13 years ago, my director was one who, we got to keep these up and running because how many Windows machines do you know have an uptime of 365 plus days? Every time he'd log into his VT and look at that uptime, look at that uptime. And unfortunately, we can only live with 1960s, 1970s technology for so long. We need to be able to reach out to those users of, or those innovators of technology. Dang it, I'm a father of 4 kids. My youngest is a freshman in high school. My oldest is 19, I'm sorry, he's 22 now, or soon to be 22. And, every time I pull out my cell phone, I'm like, hey, how do I, and it's like, here, okay, hand it to the freshman. Or even before, when we first got them, hand them to, the 7th grader, the 6th grader. Because they're the up and coming. They know the need to change with technology, to change with the program, to change with getting back out of the 70s and getting into the knots and beyond. So some of the projects that I've been looking at, going back a little bit now, how I found Bezlio. We were actually one of the early adopters of SaberLogic, back when SaberLogic first came on the scene, because we were printing a lot of green bar. And, those trees were screaming. And, our data processors, because of the way our department was laid out, we had our data processing portion of the IT department, we had the programming side of the IT department, and we had the networking side. They were breaking their backs moving boxes. So way back when we decided, you know what, let's start creating some PDFs, and we can hopefully break the scene of, or break the habit of, I want that piece of paper in my hand, and let's go ahead and send that out to them via email. We'll save a tree here and there, and SaberLogic Logicity was actually one of the first programs that I found without having to deal with building up the server to get Crystal Reports server to be able to schedule all these programs and ship them out, or all these reports. So I had been using them since 07, maybe 09, somewhere around there. And all of a sudden we came up with an issue of, if we're pulling these reports off of our alphas, we need a way to be able to get our end users to be able to run those reports on demand. Again, without having to do too much work in setting up the infrastructure for it. Basically because we've got so many new projects coming over the horizon, we don't have a lot of time to devote to some of these projects. And one of the first things that came up was Bezlio. And I'm like, Bezlio does reporting on demand. That's neat. Why does Bezlio? I've never heard of them. Until all of a sudden I dug a little further. I'm like, SaberLogic. I know them because my Logicity has been running in the background. Okay, maybe every few months I'd have to go in there and find out why is it hung? Well, maybe it hung because one of our time clocks got a little bit out of whack there, or it went down over a long weekend and we didn't realize it. So one of our first projects that we came up with is, going back to the 70s here, our ERP system, when I first started in, we had signed a 20-year contract with them. Because software never breaks down, is what our director told us. I said, okay. Well, When I first started, it was only in year 15 of our 20-year contract. So I had to deal with it, and it was written in a language that actually was very well accepted because it was easy to program in. I don't know if anybody ever heard of DML, the dynamic markup language for Ross Enterprises, which is Appian now. I see a lot of, they are a large manufacturing ERP system that really sort of makes me scratch my head to this day on why is the Turnpike using a manufacturing ERP? And one of the main reasons why we started using it way back when, before I started there, was that it was an application that ran on OpenVMS against Oracle RDB and DEC hardware. So, you know, back in my days, yeah, I could program COBOL. Yeah, RPG if I had to. You know, to this day I can still do that, but you know what? It's time to move with the, you know, today's technology. So, you know, we finally have been able to get into the 2000s with our ERP upgrade, still on Appian. And, you know, they are now web-based, and I just came back from their user conference a few months ago, and they've got a lot of great changes coming up. One of the main changes, or one of the interesting things that we've been able to do over the years is build out other portions of our organization. We do a lot of licensing, or licensing would be a good term for it. Our long combination vehicle program, to where whenever you're driving down the Turnpike, because they're not allowed on regular highways, you see the triple trailers, the UPS. Across the state of Ohio, they're only allowed to drive 2 trailers. But we have made an exception to allow them to drive on the Turnpike, but they need to have their a Turnpike license to be able to drive on that. There is a rigorous system that they go through on verifying their drivers, making sure that their equipment is in safe working operation. And we used to print out the plastic cards that anytime they got pulled over, they'd have to show their card to the trooper or to the gate to show that they are in compliance. And we did a cost study on the printer that we were using, and we realized that back before we went to EasyPass, back in 2009, excuse me, we had our own adoption of a EasyPass system that was off of a cards, an encoded card system. So we had the microbus card printer that did the embossing on the card and the encoding on the mag stripe on the back of the cards. We realized that, you know, finding parts for that and finding somebody who could actually go and do the repair work on those was getting too costly. And at that point, we weren't encoding, we didn't have the need for the encoding on the back of the card, where when a driver would come through, they'd swipe it and they knew where you got on and where you got off. And that's where our EasyPass system came into play. So we got some smaller card printers, and we realized that we did a feasibility study, and we found out that running the cards and being separated by 1.5 parking lots, it was taking too long for technology to get the cards, print them out, put them in interoffice mail, wait for somebody to come over and grab them. Then the drivers are like, we need to run next week. And, a week and a half later, they were getting their cards. So we decided that the LCV cards and some other miscellaneous cards were the only things left that were being printed on this particular printer. So what we decided to do was the LCV program is actually built into the DMLs. It's separate from our ERP system, but it's using the same underlying code. So we were having an issue trying to get the ERP system to generate the PDFs for this, since it was custom coded, and every time I would call for support, it's like, oh wait, that's custom. You're sort of on your own on that. So I was looking for a way to get these PDFs generated, and that's when Bezlio came into play here. So they were able to read into our ERP backend, at this point no longer Oracle RDB, but a Microsoft SQL backend. We were able to pull out the information, build out the card. So it would just be one extra step to go to the bezel. And at the time, once they entered in all the information for the driver, the card would show up. All they would need to do, we were debating on whether or not we should be able to email that to the technician that's running the program. Or at this point, they felt it better that, allow us to save the PDF, and then we can email everything in one big package for them. So once the card was generated and emailed, it actually went back to the database, flipped the switch on it, so the next time that card wouldn't be sitting there ready to be generated yet again. So that was one of the big pushes for me to the powers to be at the Turnpike on why we should invest in Bezlio. Okay, a lot of the background, all of the background programming I had nothing to do with. Thanks to the great team of technician or application developers here at Bezlio. They were able to turn this out for me even before we decided to go ahead and sign up with Bezlio for the first year here. And so that was like one of the first things that we did. And as we had everybody out a couple weeks after we started working on this, we were trying to come up with some other ideas on what we could use Bezlio for. Because dashboards are always dashboards, but it'd be nice if you could get something a little interactive. And it's really hard to see down below, but I think I'll be able to bring it up here and give a little demonstration of it. The map with the green line is actually, the green line is the Turnpike. And what that is representing is using heat map. So depending on data point concentrations, you'll have a brighter green, bigger dot there. And that was going off of the incidents that occurred on the Turnpike. We were looking at, accidents with hitting animals, fatal accidents, and trucks that would jackknife. Some of I have not rolled this out to anybody in our organization yet. As I say, I'm taking baby steps here on what I'm able to push out for them. Again, this was one that I really didn't do anything to help program it, except come up with the ideas of, hey, I'm collecting all this data. Unfortunately, it's not real-time data because our accident data comes from the Department of Public Safety from down in Columbus. So we get a data feed once a week. But I'm actually housing that then on our side, running reports, and in this case, being able to pull out this bezel. And one of the other projects that I came up with last week is up there in the upper left-hand corner. I was talking to Denise, our internal auditor, who actually has to deal with our inventory staff, our maintenance buildings. She had always, we were trying to figure out the most efficient way to do a full physical inventory, or to prove that we have done a full physical inventory over a year's process within all 8 of our maintenance buildings. Out of the 8 maintenance buildings, 6 of those maintenance buildings are smaller buildings, as you can see up here. The third column is actually the amount of items that are physically located in the warehouse. We do have 2 main maintenance buildings that will supply to the smaller maintenance buildings out there. And again, as I say, we are not a manufacturer, we are a consumer. So a lot of our inventory items are nuts and bolts. They could be flags for any time you see a pop-up flag on the roadside. They are also having to deal with linear feet, as in 30 to 50 linear feet of guardrail, replacement guardrail that would need to be used. And one of our biggest issues is salt, because we have mounds of salt, and how do you really inventory salt, because they're not sitting on a scale. But you have people out there and you have calculations out there that say, depending on the distance that you are from the peak of the salt pile, compared to the width of the salt pile, you can figure out the volume of your salt within so many tons. And so what she had said to me, I put this bezel out for her earlier in the week, and I said, so I remember you asking me for a report that would tell you what zones have been counted and what zones needed to be counted throughout the year, to where they were able to break up each warehouse into 12 different zones. So 1 zone a month to go out and count. Everybody was happy with that. But she saw this, she goes, what's this for? And so I said, okay. I said, remember when you asked for that report? Well, here it is. It's going out and actually looking for the last counted dates and putting that out there. And if you realize that you have 1 zone out there that's a much earlier date, that one still needs to be done. And she's like, well, yeah, that would be nice, but I still have my spreadsheet that I keep a tally of all the dates that I had for doing my counting. She goes, but I also want to know what kind of variance we had after the inventory was done. How many variances, and what is the total cost of that variance? So I sat and I thought about it, and I opened up my SQL editor, and I started writing the script for it. I'm like, okay, you know what? I've got that data. Let me redo this bezel. Because at one point I was actually trying to do some highlighting on the date to say if it was before a certain date, to flash it as red, saying that we still need to count that zone of the warehouse. And at that point I sort of broke the bezel, so I had to restart it. And within 5 minutes, I had restarted the bezel, and I actually added the new fields in. I was doing my sorting and my grouping and everything. And then I did a copy of it, and I shot it off to her. I said, is this what you're looking for? She's like, that's perfect, thank you. And that was the only bezel that I myself, all by myself, I didn't have to do it in COBOL. I didn't have to line up my columns just right like an RPG. Actually, it was RPG too, if anybody knows their RPG from back when. I'm not dating myself, okay. But the Turnpike was there before I was born. So, just the ease of the use of, or the ease of creating some of these bezels. I had to reach out a couple of times, as I say, with the ideas, and I was going down one path and realized, nope, I got to turn around and try a different path there. So within a couple of days, I was able to get a worthwhile bezel for our auditing to use. And so how can I get to the desktop here? I'll give a little interactive demo of some of the smaller ones.
Out of curiosity, do you inventory the orange barrels?
Yes, we do. We reuse them, and actually they come back and it's just stacked up in the back of the warehouse. And now one of the other things that we're going to try to do with Bezlio's help here is come up with a barcoding solution for our warehouses. The gentleman that we have, ladies and gentlemen, out in our 8 maintenance buildings are not really sometimes all tech savvy and very careful when they're holding new technology in their hand. So, we're looking for something that's a little more meaty to be able to go out there and enable them to, initially we want to do it just for inventory counting, to be able to go out there and scan the items, count the items, enter it into the scanner, move on to the next one. As I say, currently we have no barcoding anywhere within our maintenance buildings. The way they currently do the barcoding, well, I'll take a step back about 5 years ago on how we used to do the barcode or the inventory counting. We'd hang tags, 2-part tags on every item in the warehouse. So then that'd be one day of hanging the tags. Next day would be going out, physically counting the tags, marking your count on both tags. Then the next day somebody would go out, pull off the tags, and then they'd order all those tags from bin to part code and on down. And then they'd send those tags, before they sent them off, they'd randomly pull one tag out and they'd go and they'd spot check and spot count the employees. Then they would take those tags, send them out to a data processor who would actually go and count all those tags up, enter them into a flat file, ship the flat file over to me. Then I'd take that flat file, bring it into the system, and then finally say, okay, now you guys are ready to go on, and a day or two later, you'll be able to go on and now run your differences on what you counted, to where then internal audit would have to come out and say, well, why do we have this difference or that difference on all these different parts? So finally, a couple of years ago, I got them away from the 2-part paper tag, and I said, you know what? Here's a paper list of everything that you need to count. How about you guys go out and count it rather than looking at the tags? And sometimes we would have problems with multiple tags being printed because of the amount of look back that the system would say, well, you had movement on this part 3 years ago and it was located in this bin. So in case there's still parts out there, we're going to print that label for you. So once I got them the list and gave them the spot to be able to enter in their accounts on this one list, so they had one list to go against, I caught the old, okay, I'm looking for this part. This part is located over here. Okay, I've got 5 on that. Okay, next part. I'm looking for this part. Oh, it's down here. Count them up, put them in. To where actually I was talking with the chief auditor, and I was saying we need to get them away from going from paper to part, back to paper, and start in the logical upper left-hand corner of your zone and start counting, mark it, count it, mark it, in this case, before Bezlio was brought into the mix. And that's when I was thinking, well, let's just scan, enter, because when the list is created, it takes a look at what is supposed to be in that zone. So if they get to a point to where an item is on a shelf, but it isn't really on the count, they're able to add that in, and then that will make the adjustment in the warehouse to be able to add that in. So this is going to be one of our next projects here that hopefully, that hopefully we'll be able to roll out. They're hoping next couple of months, or maybe second quarter next year, depending on how well it works out.
It's actually interesting, like, the parking scaling feature, we always knew we wanted to add it in there, but it was actually that project that he's describing, the cycle academy, was what pushed us over the edge and reprioritized our development effort to have that in there. Because when we went out to present it, we wanted to show both the physical device and the on-camera device, how you can do both of those. So that's an instance, like, if you guys are interested in things that'll shape our development just based off of what type of needs you guys are coming up against.
Yeah, there's some other bezels that I was starting to look into. We also have fuel pumps at all of our maintenance buildings. I was going to try to come up with just an idea of, how much fuel we have at each of those pumps, and also who actually used the fuel out of that. But we're in the process of also upgrading our security system, our badge readers. So I may hold off onto that one, depending on where I'm going to have to be pulling that information out from. So let's see, let me go to the heat map. There we go. Oh. By the way, we need to update the key on that. So zooming in here. Okay. Let me go out a little bit. So right in here, I hate using, oh, never mind, that's a lake. You'll have to bear with me, I'm colorblind. We can, one usage that we might be able to use this particular map for, whoops. Yeah, zoom out. Yeah, depending on where we have more overturned trucks, might be a need for reducing the speed at certain times of the year. So, that's one way that we could use this. Again, this is one that I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go over. Okay.
Here we go. Just in the middle of that.
Okay, yeah. Also with, larger densities of deer strikes, we may have to move the sign over to let the deer know that it's better to cross the turnpike over here. But the one big thing that I forgot to mention about the turnpike, and I will sort of end it with this one. One of the major projects that we have going on right now is our DSRC project, which is short range communications, where we were talking about, I don't know if somebody had mentioned it earlier, about being able to pull data out of the cars as they're driving by, to be able to predict what kind of weather condition, what kind of speed the cars are traveling at. We're working on a pilot project right now with the Turnpike, the state of Ohio, and the Safe Corridor, I believe, of Columbus. There's one area down in Columbus that has been integrating a lot of this technology. There's an area right up in this area here where we're getting a lot of accidents because of the way the turnpike comes around the corner and the way the wind whips through the area. It gets really, really bad in the wintertime. And what we're hoping is to be able to pull the information from the cars using what we're calling fog technology. It really isn't up in the cloud, and it really isn't on your local area. It's somewhere in between there. It's fog data. So we have readers along the side of we will have readers along the turnpike that will be able to pull out information from the cars as they're passing by, push that data over to our Berea location, and again, we're talking, storing terabytes of data, but not really needing all that data. It's better to grab all the data and parse out what you don't, or parse out what you need and leave the rest in case somebody might need that further down the road. To be able to almost instantaneously realize that a car 5 miles ahead of us have just slammed on their brakes. Well, okay, was that an anomaly that only one car did that? Wait, no, now we're starting to get multiple cars that are slamming on their brakes, and being able to then adjust the speed limit further back to slow people down, or to change actually the message on a portable message board, caution, slow traffic, caution, ice, being able to realize that there's ice on the road. Again, this is one of the projects that we're currently working on that we're in a pilot phase to see how it goes. We've also started to equip some of our snowplows with telemetry that will actually be sending back information on how much salt is being laid down on the road at that particular time, whether they're using the liquid de-icer that we have equipped to let people know that a plow is actually active on the road, plowing certain areas of the turnpike, and also being able to locate where those trucks actually are, if they're sitting in the maintenance building waiting to go out, or if they're on the road actively driving at that time. So, you think the turnpike, you just get on and go, but there is a lot of data behind us. So, and we've got a lot of new and upcoming projects that some of them I can't talk about, but I'm just kidding. So if anybody has any questions for me, hopefully I'll be able to answer them. Yes?
You know how they use Google Maps and you can enter in your thing, it'll give you a time and show you where it's red, where the traffic's heavy. Have you ever considered using that instead of putting all the things on the side of the highway?
We were thinking that. Actually, what we've been pushing is connecting up with Waze. And so, sort of crowdsourcing incidents on the turnpike. And Eric can help speak to this.
Right now, with Waze, all we're doing currently is when our communication center gets a call, hey, there's an accident somewhere, they input it in, it pushes an alert to our website. It also pushes that alert out to Waze, so people get it, as they're driving down, hey, accident, a mile or whatever. But we're going to start pulling in traffic and also sending out, we have lane closures, we have a number of other things that we capture that we're trying to get up to them and pull their data down too to help us, analyze and have historical traffic Pennsylvania,
Yes.
PA Turnpike, they're doing a lot of ways, so we're trying to contact them, and, you know, we have some contacts.
Be careful, like, don't be too much like them. They raise their fares way.
That's what you do is you do an easy pass, and then your fares in Ohio are locked in.
Yep.
The easy pass is locked in, the cash goes up.
Correct.
Does the easy pass go up as well?
It goes up, but not as much. Yeah, we charge more for cash trips nowadays.
Easy pass doesn't go up.
I mean, I'm just technology, I'm not in, that's the comptroller, that's the comptroller.
Yes.
What year was it you guys said you put fiber optics along the turnpike?
Oh, yes, that's the other thing. We have fiber from end to end that was put in back in early 90s or late 80s. We were doing some of our third lane projects. Eventually, we would like to have 6 lanes going from end to end. I can't remember if we're there yet or not.
We're not, we're pretty close.
Yeah.
I think it's mainly just out west,
Yeah, between the border and the line.
yeah,
Okay.
but
Yeah, it was, I want to say it was early 90s that we grabbed one of the contractors and said, you got an open trench, go ahead and lay it in there.
So wouldn't it be easier to connect a device using your fiber optics and connect that to the Berea?
Yes.
yeah, all of our buildings all go into it. Do the CGRs go into it? I haven't been to many meetings about the SRC.
I think they are tapping in, yes.
So I mean, we're using it, so all the buildings, like all the toll plazas, they have, local servers there that get data, and then it sends it up to Berea. We also have a backup data center that we're copying all of our stuff over to. That's all connected through a fiber and. All of our cameras, all that stuff.
Yes. Did that answer your question? No? Yes? Any other questions? Oh, yes.
Like, how do manufacturers like coming up with a standard, or are you guys coming up with a standard, or is it just kind of the Wild West at this point in time? Each manufacturer has their own standard.
Oh, for the,
Like communication that you're trying to get done.
I think,
SRC, I think they have 2 now. Like they had an initial one that only had a certain number of data points, and then they added on an expanded one. That is, I think, kind of standardized, but it's really only on like Teslas, like high-end Mercedes. But then like for our snow plows, we wanted more stuff that isn't actually part of the SRC, and there's no way to like embed your own data in it. So that is actually going through like LTE, 4G. We have modems in there that send, so we can send all this extra data along with the data that we're pulling off of the PCMs, I think, on the snow plows.
So if there's an accident happening, because not everybody uses Waze or any of that stuff, the newer cars, apparently you can send text through a radio station, and it will turn on like your dashboard or through your speakers. Would that be like the next step?
I think one of the plans for the DSRC is you can send messages. So we can get data from the cars, and we can also send messages to them. So I think that is one of the plans down the line is, you know, if there's an accident ahead, if your car supports DSRC, we can send you a message that pops up on your dash that says, you know, accident ahead, slow down, or whatever. Or,
Get off.
you know, black ice, or, you know, whatever.
Also, with autonomous vehicles, if you can, again, this is all still, a big wish that we could eventually do this, to be able to have that car receive a message that cars are slowing down in front of you and have it automatically start to brake for you. Sort of like the self-driving cars. Yes.
So you can access your own databases for the Ohio Turnpike?
Yes.
Could you do, this is probably for Bezlio too, access other databases from the other interstates, so do a predictive, okay, all these guys are having problems, now I know the Turnpike is going to start backing up because I'm going to be in tremendous volume. Do you have access to their database, or can Bezlio do somebody else's database? So you have yours, and then you have all the rest of Ohio.
Actually, the state of Ohio is working on a consortium to be able to have a one massive data share, data warehouse.
Bezlio can put all that together and do a predictive, hey, in 2 hours, you're going to get hit over here with congestion.
Yeah. Okay. Yes?
So, sheer curiosity, the Easy Pass data,
Mm-hmm.
tag in, tag out, has there been, what have you guys been able to do with that? It's like, I'm seeing like all these end-to-end journeys and it just seems fascinating to me that this is a pile of like consumer-based data. And then I have a follow-up to that, and that is, why isn't there like a rail in the middle of the Turnpike where we could like put a train there to carry people instead of cars? I'm just saying, we got this big right away. But, trains for the win. But back to Easy Pass. What are some of the things you've been able to get out of that?
I
Do you wanna-
mean, we've looked at it some, but I don't think we have anything concrete that we've pulled together
How
yet.
much do people speak on the freeway?
Oh, we do have, that's not necessarily, what is it?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
well off of.
We have, for auditing, we have some reports of, for, people like to play games where they come in with one Easy Pass, leave with another, come back, leave, so that they can cut their, instead of, if they're going end to end, back and forth, they'll play games with the Easy
Sir, it could not
Pass.
take you 3 days and 4 hours to get.
Yeah, so we have.
But it could, if they have to stop
For
and rest.
auditing, I'd say, okay, these are the trips that took longer than this amount of time, and didn't go past Service Plaza, because obviously they can pull off the Service Plaza and take a nap.
Do you guys tag it when you go to a service plaza?
No.
Yeah. So we have to estimate the normal length of time between the entrance and the exit, and then we have a little bit of a buffer of time to say, okay, if they're over, or they could be under 10 hours on that trip because of, depending on how long they've been on the road, they're required to take off to rest before continuing on the trip. For the truckers, right.
Pay at the toll for the Easy Pass too?
No, Easy Pass is basically, you can get it at Giant Eagle, you can get it in a lot of places. You give them a credit card, it preloads it with, I think, is it $25 or $35?
I think it's 35 now.
35.
Yeah.
Then every trip you take, it reads it when you come in, and then it reads it when you get off, and it charges your account for however much time you went. And then when you get below a certain threshold, it automatically re-ups to either $35 or the sum of your last 30 days of trips or something, whichever is more. And then it constantly re-ups like that as you get low, and you get special gates that you can just go through when people don't pull in there and try and pay with cash.
Yeah.
If you drive the reverse sequence through, just with the car in reverse, does Easy Pass actually pay?
The last time I tried that, And if you put your Pokemon Go on a Roomba, it does, no.
So do you guys think, like, you know, when you have like, your future glasses on at this point in time, because you're seeing these things coming through, like, will there be a time when, like, static speed limits are a thing of the past, and, like, you're using this kind of information to make purely dynamic speed limits based on current road conditions, how other cars are driving, and stuff like that?
I know there are some people in our maintenance and engineering, maybe not so much for the whole road, but I know at least for our traffic zones, really would like to get people variable speed limit signs that you're seeing a lot. We could certainly, I mean, with all the data we have, we could probably pull something together that, you know, to not even have necessarily a human intervention. You could probably just look at the traffic coming in and, you know, the time of day and whether there's work going on and all that, and figure out what speed it should be. But
People will listen to speed limits anyway, so why bother?
I mean, it's pretty terrifying going through the construction zone at 50. You have to stare at your rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Don't look at the side.
People get mad at you.
Right, but unfortunately, there's some people that ignore the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, and we have employees who have been killed in work zones.
Here's, why don't you guys pull them over and then charge them double? Because that is actually, because the reason why, that's the signs and, I mean.
They do. Fines are doubled in work zones for speeding. Unfortunately, I'm not on the law enforcement side. We do have the Ohio State Highway Patrol. We've got 3 posts along our Turnpike, and they do patrol. Our Berea is the district headquarters for those 3 posts. You know, and there's only so many of them that can go out there. And unfortunately, it has to come down to somebody getting killed to beef up that security in those zones. It shouldn't be that way. Yeah. Because I don't know if you've ever been on the side of the road changing a tire and you can feel the cars whipping by you, not realizing that, you know, you're just a couple of feet away from them. It's scary. So, okay.
Probably good. David, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.